Hello and welcome to another Comics and Lit summary video. I'm going to summarise the first part of Act 1 of An Inspector Calls, where Sheila and Gerald get engaged. A wealthy, privileged upper-middle-class family relax after dinner to celebrate the engagement of their daughter to a respectable young man about town. There's even an expensive bottle of port to raise a glass with. Seems very civilised and innocent, right? Well, this is as good as it's going to get for the unsuspecting Birlings in J.B. Priestley's social roller coaster of a play, An Inspector Calls. In fact, the Birling family and their guest, Gerald Croft, are about to be turned inside out by the relentless and all-knowing inspector, who will shortly be arriving to disrupt their comfortable surroundings. This is part 2 of my summary series on An Inspector Calls. If you haven't yet seen my introduction to the characters video, which covers the stage directions for each character before the rise of curtain, I suggest you go back and watch that video first. Though the play takes place over a sprightly 3 acts, I've decided to split Act 1 into 2 halves so we can cover the vital characterization and exposition which takes place before the inspector arrives. So let's get going. Firstly, a quick note on the staging. The action takes place in the dining room of a fairly large suburban house, which indicates the wealth of the Birling family. In addition, Priestley makes sure to note the lighting should be pink and intimate, which creates an atmosphere of comfort and safety. There are props being placed on the table by Edna, the maid, both a decanter of port and cigar box, which indicate the Birlings' wealth and ability to splash out on the finer things. At rise of curtain, the 4 Birlings and Gerald are sat at the dining table, having finished dinner. Arthur encourages the others to take a glass of port and instructs Sybil to compliment the cook on a good meal. In a first sign of Mrs. Birling's higher social status, Sybil criticises Arthur, informing him, "You're not supposed to say such things." Birling is unperturbed, however, and insists Gerald won't mind, as he's part of the family. This instigates an exchange between Gerald and Sheila. She seems to question his faithfulness to her in the line, "Yes, except for all last summer, when you never came near me and I wondered what had happened to you." As Gerald makes excuses, Eric bursts out laughing and Sheila accuses him of being squiffy or drunk. The pair begin to bicker before Sybil steps in, criticising Sheila for her inappropriate language. "Sheila, really? The things you girls pick up these days." After this, Arthur starts to make a speech, where he speaks of Gerald's father, Sir George Croft, who owns a larger rival factory to the Birlings. He speaks of his excitement that Gerald and Sheila's engagement will mean the companies can now work together for lower costs and higher prices. As the family offer compliments to the couple, Eric is content to make fun of Sheila, joking of her nasty temper. Then, Gerald produces the engagement ring, and Sheila excitedly comments, "Look, Mummy, isn't it a beauty?" Soon after, Birling gains their attention to make a second speech, where he assures Sheila and Gerald that they are marrying at a good time, and repeatedly asserts that the predictions about war in the future are nonsense. He then grandstands about the age of progress they are all living through, and uses the great ocean liner, the Titanic, as an example of the progress which he says is unsinkable. Eventually, Mrs. Birling interrupts him before exiting to speak with Eric. Sheila also follows. Birling and Gerald are now alone in the dining room, and Birling tells Gerald that he is aware that Gerald's mother, Lady Croft, perhaps thinks Gerald could have married someone higher up in society than Sheila. Gerald seems embarrassed by this, but Arthur then discusses the possibility that he might soon receive a knighthood. Soon after, Eric enters, and the 3 somewhat dismissively talk about women and their love of clothes. Eric begins to mention a memory before curiously checking himself as if he has something to hide. Arthur then starts to dominate the conversation. This time, he starts to criticise some of the new socialist political thinkers, calling them cranks, and bemoaning the pointlessness of community, which he says is nonsense. He continues grandstanding and developing his philosophy before he is abruptly cut off by the sound of the doorbell. Of course, the doorbell signals the arrival of the inspector, which is the inciting incident for the main action in the plot. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to watch my analysis of the themes and techniques in the opening of the play, just click the link at the end of the video, and don't forget to subscribe to Comics and Lit for more English literature content.